Hello friends, today we're going to talk about a special family of plants. Did you know that plants have families too? Today we're going to talk about the squash family. Here's a butternut squash. We have butternut and acorn squash growing in the storybook garden. But the squash family includes our favorite pumpkins. We grew this pumpkin out in our storybook garden. And it also includes gourds. Gourds grow in an amazing variety of shapes and sizes and colors. Some of them are warty looking like this. We have some really neat gourds growing on the star climber. Some of them have beautiful patterns. What does this look like? A beautiful flower. I love this because it forms little heart-shaped flower petals on its beautiful body. We also have our gourds. This is a bird's nest gourd, which we can use for a lot, or bottleneck gourd that we've learned we can use to make music. I also have some dried gourds I brought along. This one looks like an apple, doesn't it? And isn't it neat that we can hear those seeds shaking inside? These gourds and pumpkins and squash are the fruit of that plant because inside are those precious seeds. Sometimes gourds have long necks. These are dried gourds, so the color has faded away, but this one the seeds have dried up, but usually you can hear the seeds making music inside. Here's a little tiny bottleneck gourd. So it's fun to explore the world by growing gourds and pumpkins and squash from seeds. What we do is we make a hill of dirt and then we plant 4 or 5 seeds in the hill, and they vine out and cover the ground with their prickly vines. So we like to eat squash, like this butternut squash, and we like to eat pumpkins. This pumpkin here is a sugar pie pumpkin, great for making pumpkin pie and for making pumpkin peanut dip. I'm going to put the recipe for that delicious snack in our activity pack. But all of these fruits of the squash family have a special purpose for our lives. Some of them we eat, but some gourds we grow for other purposes. We know that we can use this bottleneck gourd to make music as a maraca. Those seeds dangling around in there make a beautiful sound and allow us to express ourselves through music. But did you know that back in the olden days they grew gourds for even more important purposes? When we look at this big gourd that we grew out in our storybook garden, we could actually cut the top off of this gourd, pour out those precious seeds to plant next year in our garden, but we could use this as a vessel to collect liquids. People back in the olden days would go down by the river and fill it up with fresh water and they grew their own bottle. Isn't that amazing? Or you could take this gourd and you could cut a hole here, save those precious seeds to grow next year. Remember, each seed has a baby plant in it, just sleeping, waiting to grow. And we could use this as a bowl to eat out of. Isn't that amazing? People grew their own dishes. Another thing we could do is we could make a little hole here, hang it in a tree, and it becomes a nest for a bird to raise their babies in, lay their eggs inside. That's why sometimes they call it a bird's nest gourd. And there's lots of different sizes and shapes of these types of gourds. Isn't it amazing? they look a little funky when they're getting ready and drying out. I left this plain so you could see it, but what you can do is sand it down, and then you can paint it and decorate it, and it becomes a way to express ourselves through music. I want to show you some gourds that I've had since I was a little girl. My uncle lived in South America, and he brought these back from Peru. And you'll notice on this gourd, they cut this gourd in half and they used the bottom part to create a bowl. Then they carved animals to decorate the bowl, and then they used sap or color from nuts or other plants to color them to create a beautiful design. So we see some of the important animals that live in South America that help farmers down there and live on their farms. So we see llamas and alpacas. We see ox and goats and sheep. We see the farmer and his some birds that live on the farm. So I think it's really neat that people express their creativity by creating these useful bowls and vessels using their creativity out of a gourd that they grew in their garden. I think that's fantastic. Some gourds grow to be big around, and they could use those to make drums even. They'd stretch an animal skin over it, and then they could beat on it to make that music. This is one of my favorite little gourds. It looks like a little Jack Be Little gourd, and just like a Halloween pumpkin, they cut the top off, and inside you can see it's all hollow. And I use it to store some precious seeds so I can grow things in the future. But down in South America, the animals that live in that part of the world in the mountains, llamas and alpacas, are important helpers on the farm. They have those sturdy feet for climbing on mountain trails and are big help to the farmers there. They carry things on their back and are important members of those farm families, just like we have horses and goats and chickens and things. So these gourds have been used in so many different ways to help people. They're gifts of Mother Earth that help us to live happy, healthy lives on Mother Earth. And we're able to create all these vessels and artifacts because someone planted a tiny seed that grew in the gourd fruit. And we wouldn't have any of these seeds without the help of the bees and the butterflies and other pollinator pals. Every time you see a pumpkin or a squash or a gourd or eat the beautiful fruits and vegetables in our rainbow of fruits and vegetables, remember to thank a bee or a butterfly or other pollinator who helped to create the seed using their gift of pollination. Today I brought a very neat book called Pumpkin Circle. This book is really important for us living here in Tazewell County because pumpkins and squash family are such an important part of life in our county. Did you know Tazewell County produces more pumpkins than anywhere else in the United States of America? It's a very important farming crop, and we all enjoy those fruits during pumpkin festivals, during Halloween, just eating pumpkin pies for Thanksgiving, so many gifts from one important plant. So let's read the story, Pumpkin Circle, the story of a garden. And we see surrounding this pumpkin all those seeds. Remember, seeds allow us to grow plants. We couldn't live on Mother Earth without plants, and seeds are what allow us to grow. Look at this picture. I love this picture. A mountain of pumpkins. It's amazing. The pumpkin seed makes the pumpkin plant, and the pumpkin plant makes pumpkins. How fun is that? Deep within each pumpkin, the air is damp and cool. The walls are lined with teardrop seeds, each one a slippery jewel. Scrape them from their orange cave, wash away the squishy mush, save a few to grow next spring, and have a bunch to munch. So those little seeds, we can eat some. We call them pepitas, and they're full of all kinds of long-lasting energy called protein to fuel our bodies and keep us healthy. Other animals like to eat them too. And of course, we always want to save some of those precious seeds in a cool, dark, dry place to keep them sleeping until next spring and then warm temperatures that will help them start to grow. When the earth is soft and warm, plant those sleeping seeds. In about 1 week, out they peek, 2 fresh, young, fat green leaves. So here we see that seed, and these 2 little seed leaves were curled up sleeping inside the seed all along with a little bit of a stem and root to help the little plant start to grow. The reason why seeds are so healthy to eat is because they have all that energy stored inside, and that's energy that our bodies can use to get up and go and do all the amazing things we do as young explorers on Mother Earth. The garden will be home to many pumpkin cousins, 1 big pumpkin family, 5 varieties: Spooky, Max and Lumina, LeGrand and Tiny Munchkin. Each one started from different pumpkin seeds. So we see that some of the seeds are very large. Those varieties of pumpkins might grow into monster pumpkins, whereas a little seed like this is probably to grow a Jack Be Little. But we love them all. Every passing minute awakens each new plant, reaching down with silky roots, reaching up to dance. So here we see that pumpkin seed that we planted, and with the sun's light and the spring rains, that little seed split open, and we call that germination. The baby plant inside grows up toward the sun, and the roots grow down in the soil. Those roots are like little straws that the baby plant can suck up water and food from the soil. And it also does something else important. It anchors that baby plant in the ground so it doesn't blow away in the wind. And here we see our 2 little seed leaves, and now our first true leaf. And we see those big leaves will absorb the sun's light in its green chlorophyll cells, and they'll take the sun's light, the water they take up through the roots of the plant, and the carbon dioxide, that bad air that we breathe out, the plants breathe in, and through the process of photosynthesis, making energy from sunlight, the little plant grows bigger and bigger every day. The more leaves it grows, the faster it grows, until before you know it, the whole ground is covered with those vining pumpkin plants. Week by week, the backyard patch spreads before your eyes, filling every inch of space with leaves and roots and vines. And so all of these hills just spread vines all over, and those vines are prickly. They have little hairs on them, and those prickles actually protect the plants from animal predators that want to eat those plants. And this allows the plant to get bigger and stronger. Those big leaves help to shade the plant underneath so they don't dry out as quickly. And also they help to keep it from, it helps to protect the roots of the plants from drying out too. And here we see flowers starting to form and even little pumpkins starting to form on those vines. The squash family is one of the sisters that the Native American people shared with us, and we're going to learn more about the sisters in our garden and how important they are to all the people that grow them. Such a wonderful gift from our friends. Huge green leaves grow toward the sky, prickly, lush, and wide. Look at how gigantic those leaves are. I imagine that lots of little animals like to hide under those leaves for shade. It looks almost like an umbrella. They soak up sun and water and make a shady place to hide. Twisty tendrils grasp like hands, stretching out to cling. They roll down into fancy curls and wind up just like springs. Boing! And these little twisty tendrils have a very important job for the pumpkin plant as it grows. Sometimes they will grow onto other things for support, to support the plant as it grows. The spiral shape in nature is very important because it can contract into a very small shape, or it can stretch out and provide strength to things as they grow. Really neat. But it's fun to see those little twisty tendrils. Out in our star climber, we see those where the gourds are growing over the top of the star climber and give those growing gourds support. Then silently as angels, flower buds appear with pointy little collars and gleaming silver hair. And when you look at this picture, you can see the shimmer of those little hairs all over the vines and on the leaves and even on the fruits as they're forming. Those little hairs help to collect water from the air to keep the plant hydrated, but more importantly, it protects them from being eaten by animal predators. Animals don't like to bite into prickly things, so it's a really smart strategy that this squash family has developed to not be eaten by predators. Oh boy. Velvet petals open, brilliant sunlit bowls, delicately fragrant, a sign of pumpkin gold. This big flower sends off its sweet smell to attract its animal helpers, bees and butterflies, especially bees. The bees climb right down into the center of this flower and sip all that sweet nectar, and they get covered with that yellow pollen dust. Then when the bee flies to the next flower, some of that pollen dust flies into the next flower and causes the flower to be pollinated, and a fruit begins to grow. Along come the bees, floating through the air, buzzing, gathering, guzzling, zooming everywhere. And look at how happy it is down in those giant pumpkin flowers. Without the help of our bee buddies, we wouldn't be able to grow these beautiful pumpkin fruits, or if it's a squash fruit, or a gourd. And if it was a tomato plant, it would help tomatoes to form, or a pepper plant, peppers would form. Thank you, bee buddies, for creating food for all life on our planet, and fresh air too. Butterflies and spiders, grasshoppers and snails explore the pumpkin garden as they travel private trails. 100 days of weather, 100 days of care, pumpkins climbing up the fence, pumpkins everywhere, and those twisty tendrils grab onto the fence to provide support for the pumpkin fruit as it grows. Help those pumpkins sit up straight so they grow up round and proud. Scratch on pumpkin names so they stand out in the crowd. See how she's taking this little nail and scratching a word into it. It says pumpkin. That forms a scar on the pumpkin's shell that will grow as the pumpkin does. Or just sit back, enjoy the view. Pumpkins grow because pumpkins know exactly what to do. When summer turns to fall, green turns to gold. Shorter days bring chilly nights and pumpkin vines grow old. So it went from being green to this beautiful orange glow. Now comes the harvest. Pluck treasures from the vine. Clear away the lifeless leaves. Hide the rags of time. I like how they describe that. But even though the vines are dead, they have a new purpose in our garden. We can take all these dead plant materials and put them in our compost pile, and all winter long, worms and roly-polies will work on eating those dead plant materials and poop out new rich soil for us to put in our gardens to grow next year's crops. Gather up the finished fruit, ripe and fully grown. Tidy up the garden, make a cozy pumpkin home. Salute the pumpkin circle, make way for pumpkin cheer. Behold the pumpkin miracle, we're pumpkin millionaires. Then make up pumpkin faces, add bright candlelight. Set them on your doorstep, let them flicker through the night. Then, every day those pumpkins change, getting older, getting strange. Sinking, shrinking pumpkins, back to earth you go, turning into muck and dirt, a place for seeds to grow. If you leave your pumpkins sitting out on the grass or in your garden all winter long, it will rot or decompose with the help of those decomposer animals like worms and roly-polies. And inside, see how they use seeds to make the teeth and make little decorations on their pumpkins? Those seeds inside will sleep all winter long until next spring, when the melting snows and the spring rains come. That will soften the hard seed coat on those seeds so they crack open, or what we call germinate, and then the baby plant inside can start to grow. That's the pumpkin circle, from seeds to plants to fruits containing seeds, so we can always grow more plants. How did this begin? What is this pumpkin thing? Is there a Mother Nature? Is there a pumpkin king? We can be sure of this. It's a circle without end. It's pumpkin seeds to pumpkin seeds again. Thanks to the good works of our bee buddies. Thank you, bee buddies, and all of our pollinator friends.